Hi everyone, I'm Chantel.
And I'm Jessie.
And this is Glowing in Tech.
We're so excited to be joined by Yemurai today, aka the STEM Babe. So this is somebody who should need very little introduction. She's recognized by a deputy CISO at cybersecurity conference, and she's constantly winning things. This year, she won the We Are Tech Women 100 award. So welcome to you, Yam. So excited to have you here. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Yemurai. I'm a senior cybersecurity associate within investment banking. I'm also the content creator behind the platform STEM Babe. In addition to that, I'm also a public speaker who talks about wobbly careers, imposter syndrome, and also relating cybersecurity to the sciences and in really cool and easy to understand ways.
So one of the things I really love about your journey is something that we see a lot as a theme, and I think a lot of people, when they're trying to imagine what their career looks like, never give themselves the grace to do as well. You went from chemistry into cybersecurity, and it's something that's a big part of what you're advocating for, because you're very much somebody that says, do what you want and figure it out, right? So what was that like for you? How did you do that?
I studied chemistry, and then in the final year of my degree, I decided to extend my studies by going abroad to China because I wanted to figure my life out. So during that period, COVID happened, so my year in China studies were terminated, and I was forced to come back to the UK and basically look at how you can use technology to teach university education. So that was sort of my exposure into the field of technology. During that time, it coincided with a lady called Yasmin. She tweeted how well she was doing within the industry, her salary, and that was a light bulb moment for me. I was kind of like, yes, let me get into tech. And, you know, seeing someone who looked like me in this space in the industry and doing well as well and getting paid was enough motivation for me to continue. So I did a coding boot camp. And then from the coding boot camp, I worked at a health tech startup, which was looking at the intersection between chemistry and technology. So we were essentially looking at how you can use technology to detect for coronavirus. So that was really good for me because I got to see technology being used not just in education for when I came back from China, I was doing that research, but also within the sciences, which is what I had an academic background in. And so my journey into cybersecurity was by accident. So the startup life kind of ended and I was like, okay, I want to get into tech, not sure where I want to go. And so there was a recruitment event with Coding Black Females. They had a partnership with an organization that I've just left now. And I was like, you know what, this job seems really cool. I have a lot of transferable skills that I've developed from my cloud/computing background. And I thought my manager seems like someone I could work for. Why not? So I have this why not mentality. What's the worst that could happen? They could just say no. And so basically that's how I ended up here now, being in cybersecurity for 3 years. Just kind of a, let's see what happens. What's the worst they could say? No. If they say no, rejection is redirection, all that jazz. So yeah.
I love that. You have such a positive attitude, and I feel like that's something that like you need to have, especially when like switching careers, just trying to get a new job. And I love the fact that you kind of leaned on community and like putting Black females, and that you did a boot camp. And no, honestly, it's amazing. But I would love if you could tell us a little bit about cybersecurity, because I know it's like a hot area of tech, but it's like something that I don't think we have enough like Black women working on.
So cybersecurity is so important in today's day and age. I like to think cybersecurity as physical security, but in the digital realm. I relate cybersecurity to the concept of a house. So the purpose of a house is to house the people that live there, but you need the doors and the locks to keep everyone safe. So cybersecurity is like an organization's a house. It has the electricity, the water and everything. Systems are running in there, but the organization has a responsibility to put the doors and the windows and the locks to ensure that everything there works as expected and everybody in there is safe. So I relate cybersecurity in that aspect in terms of, in the digital sense, like we need to be kept online safe. And why it's so important is because it's now because now there's an AI that's come in. It's now easier to launch a cyber attack. You don't need to be a hacker. You don't need to be a coder. So now people are able to just buy like cybersecurity tools off the dark web and launch cyber attacks. And the cybercrime industry is, I think, is worth quite a few trillion. So it's a lucrative market for people to get money from.
Yeah, like I think the easiest thing to, like, when I think of cybersecurity, I just think of phishing emails and like how
Yeah.
many random, like, the CEO of my company messaged me like, "Hey, can you message me on WhatsApp?" And I'm like, I don't, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like it's everywhere you go, and I think the latest scam that like one of my friends told me about, because like a few of my friends are job hunting in the tech space right now, and
Oh,
they would
yes.
it's really crazy because they
Yeah.
get emails from or like LinkedIn messages from these like accounts, and they're like, okay, we have this role, like we would love to interview you, but the interviewing software is actually malware.
Yes.
So
that's so
they basically
cool.
get you to like download like a Zoom equivalent, and then it's got like this like fake website, and it's like, okay, it looks kind of legit. People will download it and then they'll like
Put in their credentials.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And not just that, a lot of what goes on in the geopolitical space. So if there's increased geopolitical tensions, that very much influences the cyberspace. So now nation states leverage cybersecurity vulnerabilities to launch attacks on opposition members. So in the news, there are recent cases of walkie-talkies blowing up because the opposing nation state had somehow managed to put in whatever device it was in that walkie-talkie, causing them to not function or basically blow up. So it's now, cyber warfare is, I would say, just as powerful as the physical warfare, in the sense that you don't know what could happen, how it could happen. It cause major disruption.
yeah, it's wild how much the scale of cyber warfare has changed in the last 5 years. Even like before that specific incident, we've seen it with the kind of Russia-Ukraine conflict in a way that we haven't seen before, right? It's wild.
And it doesn't just impact those two countries, it impacts
No.
everybody else in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why certain companies are reluctant to speak out against, because if one nation state gets winds that, oh, the UK says they support blah, they'll be like, okay, cool, calm. We're going to come for your national critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
And some countries have very sophisticated.
Very sophisticated.
Yeah, it's insane. I don't want to say, but
Yeah.
I think we all know.
There are some nations with entire like government
Farms.
divisions.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Dedicated to hacking people. Yeah.
One of the things I really want to ask you about is you did a coding boot camp, so you were learning to be a software engineer. And a lot of the time people think that, or a reason that they won't do that is because they're not sure if their engineering is for you. But you did it and you still managed to do a technical career, but not necessarily coding.
Yeah.
So what was that like? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my coding bootcamp was a cloud bootcamp more specifically. And for me, I see technology as a skill set rather than an industry. So it's a skill set that you apply to an industry. And the beauty of having solid technical skills, so whether it's coding, whether it's cloud, is that you can apply that across any and every industry. And there's a lot of intersection between the technical disciplines. So I knew that having a solid technical, doesn't have to be technical, but technical knowledge meant that I could apply that to anywhere. So within cybersecurity, we welcome those technical skill sets. So if you can code, we love that. If you know about the cloud, we love that. So for me, I did a lot of cloud briefly in the 12 weeks. And obviously organizations are moving to the cloud. So the cybersecurity domain welcomes that, because how do we protect the cloud? So whatever technical skills you develop, one of the beauty of having technical skills is that they're very strong transferable skills and they can be used across many of the different disciplines within tech.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a soundbite right there. You know, you like technology as a skill set. I never thought about this before, but it makes so much sense. Like,
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say that so many people are worried that like, oh, I've put a year into learning to code, so now I have to stick to it and this is what I have to do forever. But you're right, it's something that you take with you because it's the core concepts as well,
Yes,
even if you're not coding every day, right? Yeah.
So even if you did learn how to code and you weren't interested, you could be a project manager for technical teams. But now you have the understanding of, you know, how long it takes to write code, like why do they need to do this, why do they need to do that? So with that knowledge, you can still use that for non-technical roles, but you now have a better understanding of how to manage the engineering teams, for example.
absolutely.
And that's a similar thing. Yeah, it's similar for you, right? You did. You started in when you were doing product management in tech, and now you're moving into kind of
product marketing. Yeah, because So like, I actually used to be an engineer, but like a hardware, like materials mechanical engineer.
Oh, wow.
So I learned how to code when I was at uni, but like I'm not somebody that's really gonna be, you know, coding all the time because I just love talking. So,
Yes.
so I always find myself in these kind of technical adjacent roles, but it really does help when you have like this technical mind or technical background where you can kind of like still understand how to break down the problems that like as a developer would, but maybe you can't like affect it. But you can kind of like work in like a role that's next to it.
Yeah, and communicate those things in a way that somebody who doesn't have that background can't do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think soft skills are really useful within the technical industry. So it's good to have the technical aspect, but the soft skills are really essential in this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. It's how you get the message out at the end of the day.
Agreed.
So one of the things I'd like to ask you is where do you think some people go wrong in their tech journey?
Where I think people go wrong with their tech journey is that I feel like, number one, they get overwhelmed. So they would like, I want to get into tech, and in tech there's so many disciplines. It's like saying I want to specialize in medicine. What area of medicine do you want to specialize? Gynecology, pediatrician. I think people don't give themselves enough time and grace to do enough research as to what area within technology they'd like to pursue, and they just get confused. They just go with what everybody else is doing because that's what they think makes sense. The second thing I would say is people give up way too early. So obviously a lot of what's done well on social media is, I broke into tech into 3 months and I got a 6-figure career in 6 months. And that is something that I struggled with when I was first breaking into tech, because it took me a year and a half to actually get a role within cybersecurity. It's like, oh my God, why is people are doing these bootcamps and they're getting a job? But what about me? I was stacking shelves in Sainsbury's for a while after I did the 12-week bootcamp. So I think people giving up too early. Like for me, my tech journey took a year and a half. So I always think if I had given up 6 months into what was a year and a half long journey, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't have the same level of resilience that I have with regards to navigating my career in tech, which is why I think I'm kind of positive, because I've been there and I've done that.
Yeah.
So I think it's like, do research, figure out a path that's most suited towards you, not what everybody else is doing, and not giving up too early.
Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy.
100%.
And especially when you're trying to get a new job, like that is, you see people
Agreed.
getting jobs all the time, doing and you're like, why is it not me? Like, when will it be my turn? But like, you have to persevere and you have to hang in there. So that's like, they're gems.
Yeah, 100%. And as well, there is like a predatory kind of engagement thing with those viral tweets that are like, here's how I did it in 6 months. Here's how I got to 6 figures. And it's important that we do call that out, because like, it's so demoralizing.
Yes.
And I'm really glad that you did persevere, but it does make me sad for all the people that don't do that, right? So
yeah, because they think it's going to be so easy. And it's like, things aren't always easy. And like, and your opportunity is not necessarily like right there. Like, maybe it takes some time, like, but yeah, no, it's true. Engagement farming is terrible.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's rotting our brains.
It is some brain rot.
And just to add as well, like my ambition was to become a cloud engineer, but that's only because that's where I heard there was the most money, and that was only the career route that I was aware of. So I think people need to be open to changes in their career, even if it doesn't necessarily align with what they had initially planned. So what I had planned to be a cloud engineer, but unfortunately the role that I was like, I did really well in the interview, I didn't get it. And I was just like, oh my God, am I doing this wrong? Maybe tech isn't for me. And then it just happened to be that this role in cyber, which I was like, I'm not qualified for, don't think I'll get it, is the one that I got. And 3 years later, it's now the hot topic, where it wasn't as much 3 years ago. So I think it's like, have an idea of where you want to go, learn the skill sets, and be open to you using that skill set in other ways that you didn't necessarily think.
Yeah, and you don't have to stick to it so rigidly that you turn that situation down, because you could have said, actually, I'm not suited for this cybersecurity role, so I'm not even going to bother.
Yeah. And to be honest, it was even just looking at the job description of being like, you know what are they looking for? They want people with cloud and etc. I don't meet all of the requirements. I meet half of the requirements. Let me apply and see what happens anyway. And that's what I think people need to be open to as well. You don't necessarily have to meet all the requirements, even if it's a job that's not necessarily what you wanted, but there's some parts of the requirements you're like, do you know what? I've got a bit of knowledge in this. Try and apply for it anyway. A lot of tech is like, once you get your foot in the door, it's a lot easier to curate it how you want. So now that I'm in cyber, it's so much easier for me to move into a cloud engineering role because already I've got that industrial work experience. I work within an organization. But if I had just been like drawn on like, oh no, I'm only going to do cloud, I don't know how long I'd still be on the market for.
Yeah, that is very true, actually, what you're saying about maybe your experience doesn't like exactly match what they're saying. Because sometimes I feel like they just put things in their job descriptions that are not really relevant. Not like they're not relevant, but it's like it's a moonshot for them as well. And you can't be discouraged. Like you're not always good in life. You won't tick all the boxes.
Yep.
Because like in like blockchain and Web3, sometimes I see roles and they're hiring for like a senior or something. And it'll be like 11 years experience in Web3. And I'm like, I don't know if we've been here for 11 years.
Yeah, no.
What are you saying? But it does discourage you if you are kind of newer and like maybe you don't feel like as firm on your feet.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important to just make sure that you like, you go for it.
Yeah.
The worst they can say is no.
Yeah.
You'll be okay.
Yeah.
There will be other jobs that you can apply for.
And like if you don't go for it as well, there's probably going to be someone that meets even less of the requirements applying for that thing that has the confidence and they might get it, right? Like it's not always about having all those things 100%.
And I think just to add, I think it's more applicable to women because they're more likely to only apply for a role where they feel mostly competent in. Whereas men are like, okay, I meet like 40 to 50%, why not kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's good enough. I also think that like when you get hired or when you get a job, they don't expect you to know everything.
Agreed.
They hire you because of like who you are and like how you approach problems.
Yes.
And they expect you to learn on the job.
Yeah.
So there's so much of it that is just like a mental game before you hit submit that you have to get over.
Yeah.
And in my first cyber role, I was doing a lot of learning on the job, to be fair. It was a lot of learning on the job.
That's true. Same for me. And you don't get that impression from when you're applying, do you?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
so much of your first few months and even after that, a ratio of your day to day is going to be you upskilling.
Yeah.
And it's also not the technical stuff, like even the ways of working.
Agreed.
Every company you go to, they work in different ways.
Agreed.
Like you have to learn that company and how they communicate internally and how like you set your goals and like all of that stuff comes on the job. I don't think we speak about that enough, to be honest.
For sure.
Like, you basically learn everything actually like in your first like 6 months.
Yeah. I'm really glad you mentioned Yasmin because shout out to her. I remember those tweets going viral of hers back then.
Absolutely insane. She got butchered for that.
She did. And so just for those who don't know, do you want to summarize?
Yeah. I hope she doesn't kill me. I love her and I'm here.
She's
I am
amazing.
now where I am because of that tweet. So shout out to you, Yasmin. But yeah, it was just a while ago on Twitter. She just talked about how in comparison to her other peers, other demographics, she wasn't getting paid as much. And obviously at the time, she tweeted, sort of her salary stuff and people just angry for no reason. And it was crazy because I was like, oh, rappers will talk about how much money they make and like
Per feature.
yeah, exactly, like crazy. And she's told us, given us a roadmap of how to become what she's become, like literally do this, do that, do this, do that. And it's so funny because like 3 years later, and now people are like, oh yeah, look at me, I do this, look at me, I earn 6 figures. Now it's accepted. But at the time when she tweeted it, it was like, you're lying and all that jazz.
Yeah, she had a lot of people trying to discredit. And
Crazy.
Yeah. And she's a black woman doing bits and trying to show other people how to do it. And she's given that breakdown and people are like, nah.
I went on Glassdoor and I was like, guys, she's not lying.
Yeah.
Like, and the thing is, it's like, obviously it's not easy for you to earn that amount. If you look at the breakdown of what she'd done, I was like, this is someone who's worked hard. This is someone who's smart. And like, of course she can demand how much she's asking for. And she was saying in comparison to other demographics.
Not complaining.
She's not complaining. Like, it's obviously there's a race gap or a gender gap in pay in tech, even at the higher figures. It's kind of like, oh, be grateful that you're on that kind of salary. But she was like, in comparison to other people, like we're getting underpaid. And if we want to go to those levels of wealth, of which I'm sure the people who are complaining about would love to, you too would be annoyed at the gender and race paid disparity that there is. So
and also her feelings are valid. Like, there's nothing wrong with feeling like that. And it's not a slap in the face because she's giving you the roadmap. So if you want to be successful in this way, you can do this.
Yeah. But that's something that you're quite passionate about with STEM Babe. I see you posting so much content about the similar like roadmap to getting a high paid career.
Yeah.
So why do you think that's such an important thing? Why are you so passionate about encouraging underrepresented people to pursue that high salary?
Yeah, so I'm really passionate about showing high paying careers, especially for women, because there's a lot of stats, I don't have them on the top of my head, around pensions. Women, pensions, we have a lot less compared to men. And also I read an article saying that Black women, when they get to retirement age, are less likely to retire. They'd rather work part-time because they don't have enough savings. I think the UK average saving, there's an article about the UK average saving being about £1,000. There aren't that many people in the UK who have £1,000 saved.
Yeah.
And there's just so much, like things like your maternity pay is dependent on your salary. Your bonus is dependent on your salary. Your pension contributions from your company is dependent on your salary. The higher your salary, the higher your company pays towards your pensions. Yeah. And even just having financial freedom to do other things. So working in tech, I guess, has given me that freedom to be able to comfortably save, invest, and enjoy life, which I think we all deserve. Why should we struggle? Like, that's the whole purpose of us enjoying life. So that's why I'm really passionate about it. Like, it's actually possible to do this legally. Just saying, legally, if you put
in the good fight.
Yeah, if you put in the work, and there's good reason as to why you should look to do that for your own future, whether you want to have children or even when you retire as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think like the work that you're doing with your platform and just like knowledge sharing.
Yes.
It's so important because I think like before I got into tech, I didn't know anything about tech. Yeah. Like I was just like, I'm going to be an engineer working in the energy industry. Like I didn't know anything about what was happening.
Yeah.
I didn't know like, I don't know. It was like darkness, honestly. But like, so like doing what you're doing and like sharing information this way and like, so helpful to so many people because it literally will help them change the trajectory of their lives as well.
Yeah, and not just the salary thing, but just what I realized is that information is not shared equally and amongst the people that deserve to see it. So luckily for me, I'm quite well networked anyway, and I'll just see people on LinkedIn like, we're looking for a junior data analyst, we've got these job postings open. I'm like, well, the people who need access to this information don't have that access. So I use social media as an alternative form of recruitment and a platform for people to find information that they wouldn't normally have access to if they aren't connected to the right people. Because obviously people use social media, how to get into tech, how to get into cybersecurity. Now they're able to use my page as a resource bank for finding opportunities, resources, and tips on how to break into tech. But also having me as a representation of Black women, they can be like, oh, hang on a minute, there's a Black woman who's talking about this opportunity. This is something that I can apply for. Like different people can say the same thing, but it's received differently depending on who's saying it. So that's why I'm quite visible, because I understand the impact of me as a Black woman saying what I'm saying, because it'll be another Black woman or another Black person or another woman who'll be like, oh, this is coming out of a woman's mouth. I relate to this. Maybe this is something that I can aspire to do, like Yasmin did with her tweet. If it was another demographic, I'd have been like, oh, that's nice. Like, must be nice. But when I saw her, I thought, oh my God, like she can do it, so can I.
Definitely. And you're speaking about things that we might not otherwise find out about, like specifically with maternity pay.
Agreed.
And the amount of money you need to have saved in order to take that career break to have a baby.
Yes.
Like that's something I don't feel like I understood until I was a few years deep in the corporate world, and I wish I'd have known earlier. And I want everybody to know about it, right? And that's what you're doing. So
thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Glowing in Tech. Please can you tell our audience where they can find you?
So you can find me on Instagram, STEM_babe_, and on TikTok, STEM_babe.
Amazing. And it's honestly been a pleasure like talking through your career, how you got into cybersecurity, and then also just like talking more about your platform. So make sure that you follow STEM Babe, okay? Because you need these gems.
Absolutely. And stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to be delving into Yem's tips for job hunting and thoughts on the industry and the job market at the moment. So see you next week.
See you next week.
All right.